السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما جهلنا وذكرنا ما نسينا وافتح علينا فتوح العارفين. For those of you who attended last week, this is just a quick recap, inshallah. To say that we discussed an introduction to Tazkiyah, and we said that we would approach the topic from 5 different questions, 5 different perspectives. Why is Tazkiyah important? Who should be doing Tazkiyah? Where and when should Tazkiyah be done? And how should we do Tazkiyah? And the reason for this approach is essentially, as we understand, Tazkiyah is a concept, it's an idea that we sometimes find difficult to relate to action. But if you think about it, Iman is not a physical thing. Islam is the physical or the outward expression of Iman, but Iman محله القلب وصدقه العمل. So Iman sits in the heart, and we see evidence of this in action in Islam. And this is why we said that the munafiqun who lived at the time of the Prophet and with the Prophet and with the companions والسلام, outwardly were applying Islam, but inwardly Allah exposed them for the liars that they were. And this is why we are warned a lot about nifaq, because this is an inward state which can be hidden by outward actions. And this is why in the ayah قالت الأعراب آمنا قل لم تؤمنوا ولكن قولوا أسلمنا. We express the outward. Actually, you don't have Iman. Your heart is not pure. So we discussed why is Tazkiyah important in the light of several bits of evidence, and we just took two ayahs as evidence. One was from Surah Al-Baqarah. يقول الله تعالى بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم كما أرسلنا فيكم رسولا منكم يتلو عليكم آياتنا ويزكيكم ويعلمكم الكتاب والحكمة ويعلمكم ما لم تكونوا تعلمون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent to us a messenger from amongst you. He's telling Quraysh, he sent to you a messenger from amongst you, reciting to you our verses and purifying you, يزكيكم ويعلمكم الكتاب والحكمة, and teaching you the book, the Quran, and wisdom, the tafsir of which is usually sunnah, and teaching you that which you did not know. And so we summarize the prophetic mission from this ayah, يَتْلُو عَلَيْكُمْ آيَاتِنَا وَيُزَكِّيكُم. That's actually the second obligation. وَيُعَلِّمُكُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَيُعَلِّمُكُمُ الْحِكْمَةَ. So 4 things in that ayah. And the same in the ayah in Surah Al-Jumu'ah. And it's interesting that the Tazkiyah, the purification, comes before Ta'aleem al-Quran and the wisdom, the sunnah. So you have to start, and we're all born ala al-fitra, as we said, in a pure state, which then becomes tarnished, changed, adulterated, less clean, less pure. And this is why the struggle of Tazkiyah means that we want to repurify ourselves and achieve the nearest level we can to that original pure fitra state. And we also touched upon the importance of Tazkiyah when we explained that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to bring our attention in the Quran to something that is either very great or important in its own right, He takes a qasam, وَالشَّمْسِ وَاللَّيْلِ لَا أُقْسِمُ بِيَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ, all great things, to bring our attention to these great things. And Allah has the right to take an oath by anything other than Himself, Jalla Jalaluhu. But as Muslims, we only take an oath by Allah. So in Surah Al-Shams, we explored the importance of Tazkiyah because it came after 8 or 9 oaths. وَالشَّمْسِ وَضُحَاهُ وَالْقَمَرِ إِذَا تَلَاهُ وَالنَّهَارِ إِذَا جَاءَ وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا وَالسَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَمَا طَحَاهَا وَنَفْسٍ وَمَا سَوَّاهَا. So how many oaths is that? 8 or 9. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهُ. So we established that the why, Tazkiyah, is important from this evidence. And clearly we as Muslims, as followers of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, are obliged to follow his footpath and obliged to fulfill his mission of وَيُزَكِّيكُمْ. So now we move from the why to what is Tazkiyah. Okay, so we need to define it in a way that helps us understand how we can then link it to the final session, the final dars in 2 weeks' time, inshallah, of the how. Because we want to leave this topic with آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات. So we accept Tazkiyah, we understand what it is, we know the obligation, now we need to act upon this. There's no great benefit of lack of action. This world has been created for us to act. وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ is always coupled with anything to do with mu'mineen or iman. So what is Tazkiyah? So whenever we approach any word from a study, an Islamic study context, always remember that it will always have 2 definitions. One is to do with language, what the word actually means in its day-to-day use in language. And the other is a technical definition, something that relates to the Quran or fiqh, or there's a technical definition. And the 2 are usually related. So, Tazkiyah, Zaka yuzakki tazkiyatan is a masdar, is a root word related to the same word that is zakah. خذ من أموالهم صدقة تطهرهم وتزكيهم. So the zakah that we pay every year is a purification of one's wealth. So in the same way, Tazkiyah from a language point of view means purification, development, tarbiyah. And this could be self-development, growth. All of these are related to the word zakah. And the word tazkiyah or zakah or its derivations, words related to it, have been mentioned in the Quran around 18 times, in 15 different verses and 11 different surahs, something related to the word or the root or the derivation. So when something is repeated like that in the Quran, it usually carries some significance and importance. The technical meaning, so the language meaning, the linguistic meaning is purification, development, growth, tarbiyah, that kind of perspective. The technical meaning, so the fiqh, the religious, the Quranic meaning, means something in relation to the continuous struggle to re-purify ourselves, as we said. And this is related to behaviors, actions, words, or any other deed that you physically do. It has to have an inward reflection. In the same way that eating and drinking or abstaining from eating and drinking in Ramadan is related to us reflecting and changing our behavior. Tazkiyah is a much broader thing that relates to Ramadan, it relates to Salah, it relates to Sadaqah, it relates to your behavior at work, it relates to your behavior with your neighbors, with your parents, with your next of kin, with your rahim. So Tazkiyah is a much broader term that from the application or the action perspective is the purification of everything that you do. So this relates to the understanding of the hadith that we have all heard before, to do with ihsan. And the hadith, for those who can't remember it, it relates to Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam coming to a gathering where the Prophet ﷺ was with some of his companions, and his appearance was very striking because his clothes were very clean and very white, and his hair was very black, so the contrast was very noticeable. And لا يرى عليه أثر السفر. So this was somebody who was strange to the companions who were with the Prophet ﷺ, and he must have come from outside of Medina, but he didn't look like he'd been traveling recently, so that attracted their attention. But the hadith relates to the unusual sequence of the discussion, that he asked the question and he gave and the Prophet ﷺ would answer him, and he would say, yes, you are right. So there was confusion with some of the Sahaba. Why is he asking a question that he knows the answer to? قال يا محمد ما الإسلام? So Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied, Al-Islam tashhad, the pillars of Islam. قال صدقت. That's correct, you're right. ما الإيمان? And so on. ما الإحسان? قال أن تعبد الله كأنك تراه. Ihsan is worshipping Allah as if you can see Him, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So how is this relevant to Tazkiyah? Well, Tazkiyah is the process with which we attempt to achieve ihsan. Okay, so this is the highest maqam, this is the highest state of our obedience, of our acting, of our performing the acts of worship, is to try and achieve ihsan. And ihsan is not something that is limited to the furud. It's not just salah, zakah, and hajj and umrah. No, ihsan is a much wider concept, and this is something that we really, really desperately need as part of our individual da'wah to non-Muslims. أن نكون محسنين. So to achieve this level of excellence, we need a process, and this process is tazkiyah. And tazkiyah in this sense requires two elements. One is niyyah. Okay, so if I go to work and my niyyah is to make halal money, then everything I do at work is inshallah rewarded. Work is mubah, it's permissible, but it's rewarded if you take a niyyah lillah. In the same way that if you go out for a walk or for a run or to play football or whatever, and you take the niyyah that this is to strengthen you to do qiyam, then everything you do with that niyyah is rewarded. So you've gone from a mubah, permissible, to something that you are rewarded for. So niyyah is very important, and it's a conscious act. And وَالنِّيَّةُ مَحَلُّهَا الْقَلْبِ. Again, we go back to al-qalb. Internal state, the internal state is very, very important and very, very poorly looked after. So ihsan can be achieved, or we attempt to achieve ihsan with tazkiyah, with purification. And ihsan, as I mentioned, applies to everything. And the proof of that is إن الله كتب الحديث رواه الشيخان إن الله كتب الإحسان على كل شيء. Allah has ordained that you perfect whatever you do on على كل شيء, everything. So we go back to the importance of the internal state, and tazkiyah is the process, it's the active, conscious, internal process that helps us resist external bad influences. We generally think about this as shaitan, jinn, but it's sometimes something a bit more subtle. So bad company, bad friends, bad influence. We all have access to external influences that at a subconscious level affect us. We're all on the phone for a long time. We're all watching television. We're all on the internet. All of these are influences, and it could be very slow and hidden. But we also have our internal influences, the nafs. Okay, and the nafs is a very difficult concept to deal with, because nafs and ruh are used interchangeably, and this is why it's difficult to be specific. What is the nafs? And if we talk about ruh, قُلِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي, you can't give it a physical meaning. But we do know from the Quran that there are maratibun nafs, there are different levels of this nafs, different actions of this nafs. And this is where understanding this will help us think more about tazkiyah and relate this to salah, zakah, siyam, and our behavior outside of these acts of worship. So you have the inna nafsa la ammara, inna nafsa la ammaratun bisu illa man rahima, Surah Yusuf. This is the nafs that encourages wrongdoing. Go on, nobody's watching, try this, do that. Nafs al-ammara. And then you have the nafs al-lawwama, la uqsimu biyawm al-qiyamah wa la uqsimu bil nafs al-lawwama. This is the regretful self. This is when you realize you've done something wrong, and this is a rahmah from Allah. He's given us actions to do, He's tested us with things, and He's given us an internal process of trying to roll back and start the process of tawbah. Okay? And then you have an-nafsul mutma'inna. Ya ayyatuha an-nafsul mutma'inna. And this is the nafs that we want to try and achieve, and if we feel it at any point in time, especially in Ramadan, it's very difficult to maintain, and everyone will have a glimpse of this. You start before Ramadan feeling something, you achieve everything you've achieved in Ramadan, subhanallah, with the barakah and the help of Allah, and then it's like you just go into this different planet after Ramadan. And the difficulty and the jihad of the nafs and the struggle and the tazkiyah process is what is needed so that you can carry on what you have achieved in Ramadan outside of Ramadan. What you have felt during 2 rak'ahs of qiyam to carry on during the rest of the day and in the rest of the salah. What you have done with yourself to extend to your friends and neighbors and rahim and next of kin. So it's an ongoing process. It's an ongoing process. So to conclude, we've discussed why tazkiyah is important, the fact that it's obligatory, so that's the who, that's all of us. And we've talked about what tazkiyah is. It's an active process to re-purify ourselves, to go back to the state of fitrah or as close to that state as possible. And we discussed the importance of niyyah and the renewal of the niyyah, and the fact that it is something that is required for everything we do. For any ibadah, before salah, before siyam, before hajj, before umrah, the condition before which the ibadah can be started is the niyyah. And likewise, if you take a niyyah lillah in anything else that isn't a fard ibadah, like sports, eating, sitting with your friends, going on holiday, everything that is not haram, that is mubah, can be rewarded with the niyyah. And the niyyah mahalluha al-qalb. And the qalb is the seat of where the tazkiyah is, and this is the driver, this is the dynamo with which, inshallah, we will continue to remember the importance of tazkiyah, purify ourselves. And أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم وجزاكم الله خيرا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.